Corey, welcome.
Thanks.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good.
If you don't mind introducing yourself to my 21 listeners on Spotify, all 21 of them,
Yeah,
um, you mind introducing yourself?
sure. Yeah, so I'm Corey Heitzman, currently living in Denver, Colorado. Jeff and I met, I don't know, feels like forever ago now. Maybe it was like been like 10 years or something back in Orlando.
Yeah, 10 years.
Um, Working technology, technology management, trying to get research and development type technologies into users' hands. Done that in the oil and gas industry, especially the chemical industry, defense, and now quantum technologies.
Quantum technology. Whenever I hear that word, I know you've been involved in this type of technology for, you know, a
Been
while
two
now.
years. Yeah,
2 years
2 years
now.
now.
God, it's been 2 years. But
Yeah.
yeah, I want to take it back to what you just said, how we met, because before we hit record, I thought you kind of had some good nuggets of advice on how to meet people with similar
Yeah.
interests, and
Right.
it just so happened that you and I had a lot of similar interests. But we met at a dog park in Orlando, in Baldwin Park, which is
Yeah.
it's a beautiful neighborhood in Orlando for those that haven't been there. But we're both dog owners, and I read a tweet from Sahil Bloom this morning saying like, if you want to meet people, don't go to these like generic networking events. Like, go to focused events where there's going to be similar interests. Um, and that's like the best place to connect with people. And that's where I connected with you. We
Absolutely.
both had
Yeah.
our dogs running around, and we figured out we had a lot more in common than that. So
Yeah. So I think when we were living in Dallas, we got a dog, and all of our friends that we met were through the dog park. We lived in downtown Dallas in like an urban environment, and there was a community dog park right across the street from our apartment. And you start to see the same people every day, start talking, chit chatting, find all the things you have in common. And then it was a similar thing when we moved to Orlando. We were there in Baldwin Park, and you guys were there with Striker, and um, yeah, we hit it off from there. Who knew we would have so many other things in common? And then here we are years later, still keeping in touch halfway across the country.
oh, it's amazing. Yeah, and I was so grateful I got to see you when you came to Northern Virginia. Was it this past winter or
Yeah,
fall?
I think it was December.
Okay. Yeah, you've been really easy to keep in touch with. I think we have a lot of similar interests. Spans dogs, motorcycles, defense technology. I think you and I could talk for hours on that.
Hmm.
What else? I mean,
Watches.
watches. Here we
Yeah.
go. Show them the watch.
Yeah.
I'm rocking my Sangen that I bought. I bought this watch from this guy in Sweden from eBay. I buy a
Oh,
lot of my watches
nice.
from eBay, and I got a really good price. What I perceived as a good price on it, and the guy was so excited to like ship it over the pond. And I don't know. I like eBay because you have like this international market, and I guess this American watch that was, I think it's manufactured. I can't remember where it's manufactured, but it's an American brand. But it's popular in certain circles in Europe. And you got the Omega on, right?
Yeah. Omega Aquaterra.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
beautiful. I love the
This is like
Omegas. Classic.
my first legacy piece. Whenever I got a nice job, it was one of the first things I bought because like I don't know, I really love my grandparents and all of that, but they don't really have a lot of legacy things that are like memorabilia that they can hand down generation after generation. So I kind of wanted to establish that
Oh, that's
and
cool.
kind of mark a big milestone in my career. So there's always a story that goes with it, kind of thing. And this thing will last forever. So
It really will. I think the Omega was one of the watches that they qualified to go on one of the Apollo missions, if I'm not
hmm
mistaken.
the first watch in space.
Oh, okay. That's kind of a cool like claim to fame, right? Let me see which
Yeah.
watch Apollo mission. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of. I forget who wore it, but was it the Speedmaster?
Yep. It was the Speedmaster chronograph.
Oh, okay. So they actually, I'm gonna pull this up real quick. They have Let me accept all these cookies and everything. Okay, this is cool. So they have the Apollo 11 50th anniversary edition. Check this out.
Yeah.
This is actually a
Yeah.
pretty sick watch.
And they have a couple of different configurations of it. One where they've changed things, like this one's obviously been changed for the anniversary edition, but they have some that are still the original spec with the Hesselite crystal and the manual wind movement that they actually had in that the ones that went into space. So it's pretty cool. You can get like an updated one with sapphire if you're more into, sport watch banging it around, don't want to get scratches on the crystal, or if you want to stay, close to the tradition and the heritage of all of it, you can get the old spec. But I haven't seen this one. This one's really nice.
I know. I don't think I've seen this one either. It's got the little What do they call that suit?
Yeah,
The extravehicular. What do they call the space suit? It had a really cool name.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but it's what they used to do spacewalks, and I think that's what they wore when they landed on the moon. Yeah, kind of a cool claim to fame. And I don't know, you probably already knew this, but like they're very particular about what goes up into space, not only the space station, but even if they're just doing like an LEO trip, not only because of weight, but of fire hazards. Like I noticed, like I think someone wanted to bring like a rosary, like set of rosary beads or a wooden cross, and they're like absolutely no wood. They're like there's like no wood, nothing combustible allowed in space. I don't know, maybe you can talk to that. I don't know the details on that, but I know they're very particular about what you can and can't bring on the space station.
Yeah, space qualifications, one of the harder things. There's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape involved for good reason, right?
Yep.
You don't have a rescue team there for you, so like everything has to be self-sustainable. But yeah, radiation's a big problem also, as well as static and some other like electronic um, type discharges that can cause problems up in the space stations.
Oh yeah, electronic discharges is one of them too. Yeah, I
Mhm.
guess the Speedmaster wouldn't have that problem. It's like there's no battery. It's a
No,
mechanical watch.
everything's mechanical. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm fascinated by is whether or not that thing would keep good time in zero gravity.
yeah. I think that's one of the so in watchmaking heritage, they created this device called the tourbillon, which is a three-dimensional rotating piece of the movement that actually removes gravity from influencing the the kind of internal workings, mechanical movement. So that's kind of gone to the wayside, and they just put that more in like high-end watches these days. But that was originally one of the technologies that they developed to remove the influence of gravity. So they found a way to around that with modern watchmaking. So pretty much watches are have very little influence from the gravitational forces. It's more of the shock and vibration um, of your you wearing it, bumping it into things.
Oh my god, I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so gravity like didn't wasn't really a huge factor. Maybe it like was setting it off a little, but really it was not really a big
yeah.
factor. Yeah.
No, and those were old manual wind movements, so the tolerances are like super tight. That when you go to wind it, everything's just kind of held in place by itself. Um,
Okay, that makes
and then
sense.
the balance spring that actually keeps the oscillation is is pretty tight and has a pretty strong force. So in zero gravity, it's not really that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This Sangen that I got is really freaking cool, but I'm not sure. I think it uses like a Seiko movement. It's like a
Hmm.
generic movement that's like proven and reliable, but then they kind of just put their own spin on the dial and the design, and I really like it. It's just like I don't know. It's just like it fits well. It keeps like perfect time. It's got a 48-hour reserve. There's something about having like because I feel like I'm just always inundated with screens and electronics and just
Yeah,
wearables and it's kind of nice to just have something that would just work without any batteries. I don't know. It's
yep,
just like this will probably keep good time for my son. Like it might have to get like
yeah.
serviced
You get
eventually,
service
but
every 5 to 10 years or whatever.
yeah, it's amazing how good these things last. And the what's like your dream watch? Like if you were to be able to own any watch, what would it be?
So Vacheron Constantin makes this one called the Historique 1921. And
Love
it was the
Vacherons.
first like drivers focused watch. So it has this like kind of rectangular case, like a square rectangular case, and it was meant to be worn on the inside of the wrist. So when you were driving with your hands at 3 and 9, you could have the watch facing you on your wrist. And they only make them in like solid gold now, but they're very expensive. I think they maybe start at 28,000, go up to like 40 something thousand. But that would be like the retirement piece that I
This
like.
one,
Yeah,
this is a
yeah.
sick watch. So
And they
Vacheron is
tilt.
one of my favorite brands.
Yeah, I've fallen in love with them over the
They're amazing.
years. Like,
They're amazing.
everyone's chasing after Rolex and all these other brands, but I think Vacheron just like really has something good going. And also
They're very special.
the dial's tilted, so when you have it on your wrist and you're driving, the 12 is actually pointing straight up. So that's why it's tilted like that
Oh,
as
I
well.
always wondered that because I
Hmm.
think there's people that try to mimic this style. Like there's, less expensive brands that try to mimic this style of watch. So I've seen this before,
Hmm.
but Vacheron is obviously the classic look like this. But I didn't know that's what the reason was.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one actually has the dial on like so if you're wearing it on your left hand, the dial is
Oh,
actually facing back towards your elbow, and they say it's because this watch was initially meant to be a military watch, and they say it's easier to shoot if with a pistol if the dial's not digging into
Hmm.
your hand. It
Oh,
makes some sense. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
there's some truth in it, but it's interesting how some of these watches are like purpose built. Like the Vacheron that we have up on the screen. But yeah,
Hmm.
I'll show you one of my favorite Vacherons. Probably one of my favorite watches is let me see if I can find it. I think it's called the. I have so many nice ones. I have so many. Have you seen the one that they have the Metier d'Art? The one that
Hmm.
has like all of the like unique artwork on the dial.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's some that are very inappropriate artwork as well.
There is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Probably not for the kids out there, but like this
Yeah.
one is one of my favorites. It's got like this
Oh, that's
ship.
super cool.
I know. Yes, Ariel, I would love to buy this watch.
Yeah. How long's the waiting list?
And the other one I really like, which is kind of just a classic piece, is the Vacheron Constantin. What is it called? It's called the Vacheron Constantin Cornet de Vache. Have you heard of this
Mhm.
watch? That's
I
a kind
think
of a
so.
classic.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up too. This one I just love. I freaking love this watch so much. You're actually one of the ones that influenced me in my watch journey. You and my buddy
Oh, yeah.
Roberto. So this one just has a beautiful dial and like these little blue accents on the hand, and
Yeah. Very
it's a
classic design.
yeah, it's a chronograph too. So you can see it's got the stop start, the reset down here, and then of
Hmm.
course it's a manual winding watch. But it's a beautiful chronograph, and you can see the chronograph here and here.
Yeah. And the
Oh,
lug design's really nice that it keeps the dial like very symmetric and very circular. And then the lugs just kind of pop off the edge.
it's a gorgeous watch. This is one of the most handsome watches that I've ever seen. Um, but yeah, I think you have good taste. The Vacheron is just kind of unique. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think it's my favorite brand. I mean, I would love to have a Patek just because I think it'd be
Yeah.
kind of cool. But the
Sure.
Vacheron is honestly, I think I like the aesthetics on the Vacherons better overall.
One, like, I don't think I've ever seen the history 1921 in real life. Like, anytime we go to like some places where people will be wearing nice watches, like a gala at a museum or something, I'm
Yeah,
always just like scoping out everybody's watches. And it's like,
yeah,
Rolex is abundant, but there are very few that have like the more interesting pieces.
yeah. The classic like Rolex Submariner look is growing on
Yeah.
me, but it's not
Yeah.
really my style. Like, that's not really my style. Just having like, I think I just want something unique. That's what it comes
Yeah.
down to. I want something that, like you said, something that like really kind of stands out. And another way too, like some of my watches too, especially if you have a common like lug width, like if you have a 22 millimeter or 24 or whatever, like there's
Hmm.
so many straps now. I don't know if you've gone down
Oh,
the
yeah.
rabbit hole. Have you gone down
Oh,
this
yeah.
rabbit hole?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do like the exotic leathers, like alligator and ostrich and
Yeah.
all this other crazy stuff. Yeah, and then they have like all these new NATO straps too, like the NATO straps making a comeback.
Totally. Totally.
More military influence design.
Yeah. My favorite company to buy like the regular straps from is called Barton Brands.
Oh,
And
okay.
then if you want to go higher end, Jean Rousseau does like really nice leather bands, and they do leather goods too. So, but
Mm.
yeah, those two bands
Yeah,
are
good
amazing.
recommendations. I'll check them out.
Yeah, yeah. I'll link it in the notes too. Yeah. So how did you get started in? So I kind of view you as like kind of this hybrid mix of like a problem solver, but also like you're able to insert technical expertise when needed. Like you have a pretty wide breadth of engineering discipline experience that you've done software, you've done hardware. I know you have a mechanical background, but you've been exposed to kind of a variety of different engineering disciplines, probably a lot of systems engineering work.
Yeah.
Um, you started your career in the oil and gas industry.
Yep. And my background's chemical, not mechanical.
Chemical. Oh God, I said mechanical. Oh my gosh, chemical.
So it's all good.
Chemical engineering is arguably, from what I've heard, like one of the most challenging fields of study.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I loved cooking, so I was like, I like chemistry and I like math. The chemical engineering seems like a viable path. And then the third year of school, I was like, this is not anything like what I thought it was going to be. But I stuck with it because it's one of the more diverse engineering disciplines where you learn a little bit of mechanical, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of software, a little bit of controls, all these different kind of facets, and so you're able to bring a rudimentary knowledge to some of those different problems. And then depending on whatever industry you're in and what type of problems you're solving on a daily basis, you kind of pick up everything else on the go. So yeah, I started in
Yeah.
consulting right out of school, and the reason I did that is I wanted the experience more than anything. So I got to work with a bunch of different customers, a bunch of different entities, working everything from business development through to proposal writing, developing new products, um, I developed a quantitative risk analysis study that we could do using both quantitative and qualitative methods to go into these huge chemical plants and try to figure out what if something's going to fail, what would be the first thing that would fail and how would it fail? And then how does that impact all the other systems around it so that you can do a better kind of layout and configuration update to sites. And once I developed that for the consulting firm, it took off. Like everybody was super interested in it. And it just, I was listening to a lot of the customers complaining about like, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. And I try to figure out a way to kind of pull it all together and create something new that added great value. And so like through that experience, it's kind of how I've approached the rest of my career is try to get in front of the customers as much as possible, really listen to what they're saying and what their problems are, and then try to figure out the best way to collaboratively develop a solution and not just like try to, sell the same old thing.
Oh, totally. That resonates deeply with me. I tell anybody that's customer facing, whether it be business development, if you're a PM, um, like these are your two best tools right here. Like these
Yeah.
ears that
Mm-hmm.
on these oral canals on the side of your head, like they're your best tools. And I'm never, I'm always surprised, like when I see someone that just like doesn't listen. Like you're not listening. Like the customer's telling you what they want. Like
Yeah.
they're giving you the requirements, or they're giving you an opportunity to shape the requirements. Maybe they're giving you an opportunity to say, hey, this is our problem.
Yeah.
Like how can you solve it for us? And anytime I've talked to you about your career, because you've worked in the petrochemical industry, you've worked in the defense industry, um, whether you're facing like a petrochemical customer
Yep.
or a DoD customer, um, you're always customer centric. You're always like, well, the customer wants this and that. And it's like the fact that you always lead the conversation with that lets me know that's the optic that you look through the world. I mean, that's the optic that you use to look through problems. Like what would the customer want? If I was in their shoes, what would I want? What do I
Yeah.
need? So it
Exactly.
sounds simple, but in practice,
Yeah.
it's not very common.
Right. Well, and I would say like early in my career when I was trying to learn everything and just interface and try to figure out how things work and like figure out all the politics of, these big corporations versus smaller corporations versus consulting corporations and how everything ties together. We had an inside consultant coming in to help us with like some process improvement, leadership skill type things. And I was always asking lots of questions and like really engaged. And he gave me one piece of advice that's really stuck with me through my career. And it's that the smartest person in the room isn't always the one that's saying the most. So when you're in these rooms with executives and C levels and, all these customers, like really pay attention to what people are saying, who's listening the most and who's just talking and how the flow of information is going. And then how are the decisions being made, right? Sometimes it's the person that says nothing the whole meeting that's listening, trying to figure out how to piece together everybody's input to then provide a solution or recommend a solution collectively with everybody's ideas rather than just kind of pushing their own agenda and really like taking a hold. And I found that there are different companies, right, that have different cultures, and some have cultures that empower that want people to listen and want everybody to volunteer their ideas and collaborate together. Then there are those companies that are very hierarchy driven, that the top, more military type regime where the orders come from the top and they trickle down. And maybe you do get some creativity in like how you execute at the bottom, but uh, you have less of a thumbprint on like the strategy and the overall kind of direction of everything.
Totally. I wanted to get your take on something of the same vein because I feel like you're a really good listener. I feel like that's one of your awesome qualities, one of the things I love about you so much. But I was reading this article, same guy, Sahil Bloom. He's a cool guy. He said there's 3 levels of listening. There's the me listening, which we're all familiar with. You're having a conversation, but your internal voice is relating everything you hear into something in your own life.
Yeah.
These are really like the people that are kind of like waiting for their turn to talk in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So like we're all familiar with that. I think a lot of people fall into this category, myself included. I used to fall into this category.
Yeah.
There's the you listening, like you're having a conversation and you're deeply focused on what the other person's saying. And then the us listening, which I think is kind of what you're describing, which is like you're not only like you're building a map of the other person, like, how do they fit into the organization? understanding all the new information they're sharing, and how does that fit into like a more complicated map of who they are and like what drives them. I think this is really cool. This was not a concept I was familiar with. Obviously, the me and you thing, I
Yeah,
think most people
that's
fall
pretty
into those two
standard,
categories. Yeah, it's pretty
right?
standard. But the us, I don't know. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think there's elements of all of these that are useful, right? When you first meet somebody, you want to be in the you mentality where you're listening to everything that they're saying. But then in order to build a relationship, you have to provide something back that's relatable that they can then latch on to, right? You don't want to just be the person that's being talked at and then you walk away and they're like, oh, that was a great person. I know nothing about them, right? So you do have to be able to like engage back and forth and relate to things. And the same with us, right? We were just at the dog park and then we found out we're into motorcycles and all these other things that like you just, well, we were joking, little side story, we're coming back from Hawaii this week and we were standing in line um, at the airport and I was wearing a Triumph shirt and the guy behind me was like, I have a Triumph, and I was like, no way. So we started talking, and then the woman behind us had just come back from a cafe racer convention in Portland, like in April, and she made the joke that like motorcycle people always end up finding each other, and I found that's the case
It's
also
so
like
true.
in the workplace. Like all of my customers and stuff, one day I'll like talk about, oh, the weather was so nice, so I was riding for the weekend, and they're like, oh no way, I have a motorbike too. Like, what do you have?
Yes.
Or I just sold one, I'm actually looking for another one, what's your advice? um, so I was actually in Australia for work recently, working with Australian Defence Force there, and a couple of people I ran into were talking about just selling motorbikes and like getting on the track and all this stuff, and it took me back to like the days where we would go riding and
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. But
Oh, that's amazing, dude. I mean,
um,
honestly, Triumph aesthetically, Triumph makes some of the like the best looking motorcycles. I don't think I'm looking at their adventure bikes now. I just think like anytime I see a
Tigers,
Triumph, yeah, yeah. Anytime I see a Triumph, I'm just like, man, like the logo, the styling, like those exoskeleton type frames that they have. I just
mm-hmm.
really like that style of bike. It's like it reminds me of a cross between like a KTM and an Africa Twin, like a Honda Africa Twin,
Yeah,
but it's like so much more refined. I mean, you can tell they
yeah.
use premium shocks.
Well, then
I
it's like
mean,
the BMW GS, right? But you save $5,000 for like pretty much the same amount of technology. So
yeah, I like this look better. I mean, the GS is a cool look, but for some reason, I just don't like those motors that
horizontally
stick
opposed,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the heads that stick out. I'm not. I know they're proven and stuff, but for some reason that's always been like, I don't
Well,
know, kind of
if
ugly to
you
me.
drop the bike, which you're gonna do, the first thing that's gonna hit is the head cover, and that's always just a giant pain. Like, why would you want your power source to be the first thing that comes in contact with the asphalt when you fall over? So,
It makes no sense to me. I mean, it
yeah.
makes no sense to me. I like this the way this is packaged better.
Hmm.
Um, how do they run? Do you like the Triumphs run pretty good? I've never ridden a Triumph. It's like one of the brands I've never ridden.
Yeah. So they actually do some like demo days events where they'll travel around the U.S. and they'll bring like a trailer of demo bikes, and you can just hop on one. You schedule online. You can pick whatever models they have available. So I went and rode the Tiger 900, both the kind of on-road and off-road version. Maybe it was July last year before I bought my Moto Guzzi, and because I was seriously looking at the Tiger 900, um, and like the engine is just like super smooth. It's almost like too smooth,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no,
in
I
my
hear you. I hear
opinion.
you. I hear you.
Like
Yep,
coming from a
I
sport
do.
bike background, like I want a little bit of torquiness and a little bit of chop, but it's like it's a super smooth engine. Like you could use that for anything and everything. It's almost, I mean, at 900 cc's, it seems too big for people to start on, but I honestly think it's like would be a really great bike for people to start on if they want to get into the adventure riding scene. And don't be deterred by the height. They are a little taller, but there's a YouTube channel called Doodle on a Motorcycle, and she talks about like different techniques for riding taller bikes if you're a shorter person. And she actually has a Tiger 900 that she purchased, and she's been touring across the U.S. on it. Yeah, I mean they're wicked good bikes. Just
Amazing.
yeah, I wanted a little more sporty thing. So
Yeah, I don't blame you. The Moto Guzzi is sweet.
yeah,
That's a sweet looking bike. I like those bikes too. Like aesthetically, those are beautiful too. Anything, those are Italian, I assume.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like the
I love
Harley
Italian
Davidson
bikes.
of Italy. Like
Yeah, the
got the
smoothest.
big V engine. Yeah.
Ah, it's so nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the big like V twin engines.
Hmm.
Like I love the Ducati Monster. I love like the Harley lowriders, like especially with the newer updated motors.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other V twins I've ridden. The Africa Twin's cool. The Africa Twin was pretty cool. I'm trying to think what other twins though. The Italians do it the best, I think.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. I mean, Ducati's great at what they do. You're just going to pay the premium for it.
Just giant radiator on the front. I rode a
Mm-hmm.
monster. My buddy who used to live in what was that, like? It was like northwest of Orlando. It's not Clarendon. It's Claremont. He lived in
Claremont, yeah.
Claremont. Really good place to ride too. And we would swap bikes, and I got to ride his monster, and it's a really nimble bike. I liked it more than I thought I would. You know, I thought like, Ducati's kind of gimmicky, but then I rode it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this bike's actually a lot of fun to ride, and
Yeah. They have a lot of character.
they have a lot of character. And like what you said earlier about the engine on which model being too smooth, which
Oh,
was
on the
it?
Triumph, on the Tiger.
On the Tiger, yeah. So
Yeah.
I rode. I had a customer when I was working in Orlando. I had a customer in Birmingham who had one of these. He's got a brand new Goldwing Tour, and he's the kind of guy that like
Yeah.
he puts this on a big toy hauler, and then he'll take it to
Oh.
a destination and ride it. And he let me ride his brand new Goldwing Tour. It had like Corey, this thing had like 1,000 miles on it, and he let me
Yeah.
ride it.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, seriously, like, and he had the automatic transmission. So, and talk about a smooth bike. The bike was too smooth.
Yeah.
It was like, and it's fast too. I mean, 0-60 in like 3.5 seconds. So it's like
Yeah,
not
it's got a
it's
car
fast.
engine in it, basically.
It's basically like it's basically like an old Accord engine. That's pretty much
Yeah.
what it is. And I felt the same way. Like it felt like a spaceship. It was so much fun to ride, but it was like almost too smooth to where like it just didn't require any input from the rider. It was just like you're along for the ride, but like there was not much character. But it was like if I'm gonna take a bike across country,
Oh, yeah.
like this would be cool. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's
So if
the
you're
guy
gonna tear,
yeah.
if you're tearing up miles on the highway, like something like that is perfect. Like,
100%. Yeah. So it's my dream. I've always dreamed about like getting a Goldwing like that and then just taking
Mhm.
it around the world. I don't know if there's this guy
like,
from what's his name or Emilio. He put like 400,000 miles on his Goldwing over 10 years.
oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and he even rode it to Japan. He rode it to the Honda factory, and they rebuilt it for him. They gave him
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. They rebuilt the engine block. They gave him new tires, new oil, new fluids. I think they rebuilt his suspension. This was at like 200,000 miles. Like he took it to the Honda factory in Japan. That was because he went to like, I think he went to like 100 countries.
Wow. I was gonna
Over
say
10
it's kind of
years.
like Ewan McGregor and his buddy Charlie when they did the long way round, long way down, long way up stuff.
Exactly.
We need to do something
So
like that. We need to just rent some GSs and just go ride for a while.
I would honestly be down with that. Yeah, this guy. I'll have to send you the article after this, but his name is Emilio Scotto. He did an epic motorcycle journey around the world. He was like a salesman, and
Mhm.
he was living in Buenos Aires. I don't know
Okay.
if that's how you say it, Argentina.
Mhm.
But he had a dream of traveling around the world, and so yeah, he got a Honda Goldwing Interstate, which is like the first one they built. One of the first ones they built, 1100 cc's. It's actually a beautiful
Mhm.
bike too. I like the old Goldwings a lot,
Yeah.
and
They don't look so stealthy.
it's crazy. I mean, so he wrote a book about it, and then I think now he does like guided motorcycle tours.
Awesome.
But look at this photo of this guy, man. Like, I mean, tell me. And they went through like how many tires he went through, how many like quarts of oil, how much gas,
Mhm.
and it's like it's staggering to like think about just the journey that this guy went on. Look at all these flags.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Like this is his bike. You see Air France here, all the countries he visited. He said the scariest part was riding through like sub-Saharan Africa and like in Eastern Africa. He said Africa was
Mhm.
really dangerous, but he said the rest of the world, like people thought it was cool what he was doing, and they were like willing to
Yeah.
help him. You know, he would get stranded places.
Well, that's the
Obviously,
thing.
having,
Is like
yeah,
people are so nice. Like the media, I feel like the media just makes like countries out to be, a little crazy, and then you go somewhere and you meet the people, and everyone's just like so happy to have you there, and like so helpful, and like there to trade stories and talk about things, and yeah,
yeah. We have a lot more in common than we think,
right,
don't you? Don't
yeah,
you think? I mean, like
absolutely,
the human experience, although it's different, depending on where you're born and what circumstances you're in, like the basics of like, breaking bread together, meeting a new person, the curiosity, the sense of adventure. I think that appeals to a lot of humans across cultural country borders. I'm trying to find the like how many tires he went to, and then I'll change topics. But what you said reminds me of something else too. That like most people are good. I believe in that too. That's been my experience traveling the world as well. As long as you're not an asshole. Are you a fan of like Anthony Bourdain's work? Like his,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was I re-listened to his podcast interview with Joe Rogan that took place like, I don't know, 12 years ago. It's like one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. And he was like in his prime back then, traveling all over the place. And he said the same thing. He's like, if you and he would go into these like, rural African countries, Southeast Asian countries. And he's like, if you sit down and have a meal with them, and break bread, and like you're not going there, with any agenda. I mean, he's got a camera crew with him, but like aside from that, he said the same thing that you just said. He said most people are good.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the one thing that everybody has in common for the most part is like we have to eat, right? So like having food and drink be like the center of that, and just being able to relate to that, and like I'm a big foodie and I've always loved cooking and the alcohol industry and everything else, and like just the history of culture, like through food and beverage.
That's another thing we have in common. Yeah, I forgot. We've cooked for each other a bunch of times. Like we've had each other over for meals, and we've been out to eat and drink. And I forgot about that. Sometimes I forget that like you like cooking as well. I love preparing food for people. That's like one of my passions.
Well, I think like so I love cooking for kids now, and like I think maybe Caroline got me into that the most when I made like I think I made the salad for you guys, or like for all of us, and it was like shaved squash that I had like salt cooked.
So good.
So like just breaks the cell walls down with a little bit of salt and pepper on the squash and make a salad. And you said like Caroline just like scarfed it down, like all the leftovers and everything.
So good.
And my sister recently had a kid, and she just actually had her second, and they were here visiting us in Colorado, maybe late summer. And I made made my little nephew some fried rice, and it was like the best fried rice he had ever had. And he was just like eating it and staring at me and just like, thank you so much for making this for me. And it just like melted my heart. But like,
so good. So good.
Like food, there's like an emotional experience with food outside of just like consuming it. Like it's the memories and the history, and it's just, pretty incredible.
Oh, dude, I believe that, man. I finally found this. I had to share this with you because you'll be blown away like I was. This guy, he covered a lot more ground than I thought. 485,000 miles, 232 countries, 232.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's almost all of them.
I think it was almost all of them, yeah. 2 consecutive circumnavigations of the world, 10 years, 6 continents, 1 new engine, 12,500 gallons of gasoline, 300 gallons of oil, 11 passports, 86 tires, 12 batteries, 9 seats, imprisoned 6 times, 15 traffic fines, robbed 5 times, gunfire twice, 2 traffic accidents, 9 collisions, 1 earthquake, 2 tornadoes, 4 hurricanes, 3 major illnesses, including malaria, and 90,000 photographs. Oh my gosh.
Like if you can summarize someone's life in statistics that are like pretty impressive, like that's the list.
That's a lot of miles on a bike.
Yeah.
It's a lot of miles on any vehicle. But anyway, I had to share those stats just because they're so cool. And now this guy does like, guided motorcycle tours on big touring bikes. And obviously, he knows what he's doing. So
yeah. Well, and that's like, what did it say, 85 to 95? So like before the internet and like before cell phones were everywhere, like just break out a map and go into the unknown and hope that you make it,
I don't know. That's a pretty epic journey, man. I've thought a lot about that, and obviously I've fantasized about people that I read about like this, and I know people that have done like cross country motorcycle trips where they just put like a bedroll on the back of their Harley and they just like camp out like this guy probably did many nights. Like you can do motorcycle trips on the cheap if you want to, if you want to do it that way. Yeah.
My dad and his buddies do that. They went from Texas up to Sturgis, I think, and back, and they just like camped on the side of the road the whole time, and like every 3 or 4 nights then get a hotel, shower, shave, refresh, do laundry, and then go do it again. Like
something romantic about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's hard to describe what it's like cruising on 2 wheels, just sitting on top of a motor. For people that haven't experienced it, stay away if you can. You'll get hooked.
Yeah.
You might get
It's
hooked.
like it's the closest thing to flying besides actually, flying your own plane. But I almost think it's more fun than flying because it's a lot less of like the labor of doing all the inspections and all that kind of thing.
It's definitely more fun than flying. It's more exhilarating because as a motorcycle, you have to be dialed in like 100% of the time.
Hmm.
With flying, it's like you take off, you make sure you get your azimuth, your heading correct, and then you have a wing leveler, or if you're fortunate enough to have like a nice autopilot, like you don't
Hmm.
really need to do very much. You need to monitor
Yeah.
the radios, you need to keep track of where you're at. But it's honestly, besides the takeoff and landing, it's easier than driving. Like
Yeah.
flying a small airplane is
There's not
so
a lot of
like
stuff to hit either.
no, there's nothing to hit. Like as long as you like are up on your training and stuff, and you're aware of the weather. The weather's the biggest thing for flying.
Right. Yeah.
That's what trips people up. Like they get into a condition where they bite off more than they can chew
Yeah.
instead of like just landing the plane or not taking off at all. That's honestly that's what that and fuel starvation. People just don't calculate the fuel burn correctly,
Hmm.
or they don't give themselves enough like reserve fuel, and then they have to like divert to another airport and they don't have enough fuel because you're supposed to like the FAA mandates like you're supposed to land with like 45 minutes of gas in
Yeah.
IFR conditions. Like you should
Hmm.
you should never like land on fumes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're just gliding to your crash site at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think riding a motorcycle is more fun than flying for sure. It's
Yeah.
more exhilarating. I don't know. Have you done a lot of like trail riding or off-road riding?
No, I've been wanting to get into that since we were here in Colorado. I was
Same.
like, I bought the Moto Guzzi, and then I've just been staring at the KTM like EXC 500. And I was like, maybe I should get that and then go do some stuff like out on the Western Slope or up in the mountains or whatever. But I don't have any friends that do it, and that's one of those things that's like a little more dangerous to do by yourself. So I'll find some people. I think there's a guy at work that has a couple dirt bikes and like does the trail adventure stuff
Yeah,
in the summertime.
there's definitely community people out there. I really like the KTM. What is it? The 1290
Mm-hmm.
adventure bike. That's a
Yeah.
really beautiful bike. That's like a work of art. I rode that just really briefly in Denver. Like this guy let me take it for a little spin. And I was like, that's a really powerful bike, dude.
Yeah.
That's like their larger bike. I probably wouldn't want to
Right.
take that off road in like crazy trails just because it's so heavy. But like that bike
Mm-hmm.
was really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good for like a dirt road in a country that doesn't have paved roads or whatever. But yeah, big rocks and that kind of thing. I feel like there's a lot of weight. Um, but the 890 Duke Adventure, they actually have the tank lower. It's like underneath the engine and like around the engine, so your center of
Oh,
gravity is like much lower.
890, dude.
And so I think that's kind of like that sweet spot for off-roading and doing some heavy trails, is you don't have to worry about having 30 pounds like right in front of you on top of you.
This bike is nuts. I've never seen this bike. Is this a
You
new
haven't seen it?
model?
Um, Maybe like the last 6 or 7 years, because that's what I was
Really?
seriously looking at. Oh yeah, so this is the street version. So they have an adventure version also.
Oh, okay, this is the Duke R. Okay.
Yeah,
This is a crazy paint scheme.
yeah, and all their bikes look like Hornets. They kind of have like this really kind of futuristic kind of insect look to them.
So yeah, they
But
really
if you go
do.
to
Enduro?
yeah, either enduro or travel.
I didn't realize they had
No,
so many
that's their off.
bikes.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Go down to
Okay.
travel.
Sure.
Yeah,
The
the Adventure R
Adventure R?
right there. Yeah,
Oh, dude. Okay. Now you're speaking my language.
yeah,
This is a really cool bike.
right. But
Yeah.
if you look at kind of the blue, like next to the engine case and below where it kind of looks like a BMW engine head cover, that's actually the fuel tank.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. Hmm.
Yeah, that's
And
good. Keep some weight
It
down
splits on
low.
both sides.
Yeah, I like that. That's anytime we can keep like the weight down low here,
Hmm.
it makes a lot of sense to me. Have you ever ridden any of these electric motorcycles yet?
No, I've been looking at them. Like Zero's doing a bunch of incentives here in town, and I was like, maybe I'll go test ride one.
I know. I tried to ride a zero bike. I don't know if it was when I was in Florida or Colorado, but I thought that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know. I
Hmm.
mean, I have an e-bike. Not that that's comparable, but like I'm kind of fascinated by electric vehicles. I definitely want a Tesla. it's been on my radar. I just like
Yeah,
I
you've
don't have
been
a good reason to
you've
get
been
one. I don't
test
drive that
driving
much.
Teslas for years.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Oh my gosh,
Because there
you're
was
right.
that guy that used to live next to us that ran the Tesla shop.
Yeah, that's right. His car was fast. Yeah, Nick.
Yeah,
I wonder what he's doing now. That's a good dude.
I don't know. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's back in Orlando actually. I think he texted me a while back after we moved.
yeah. That might have been one of the first. That was definitely the first Model 3 I rode in, and he
Hmm.
took me for a spin in Orlando, and I could not believe how fast that vehicle
Yeah,
was.
the
I
torque
still
is
can't.
insane. Yeah,
Like the Model 3 is quick. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm shocked at how like what they've been able to do. The scale of the manufacturing with that gigapress, they're essentially
hmm
like casting, the pieces of the car together and pressing them with
hmm
a bunch of heat and pressure. It's such an efficient way to build a car. I know it's not easy. I think the gigapress that they bought, like it's some like Italian machine that they bought. Like I don't think it was meant for cars. I think it was meant for some sort of other purpose. And they're like there wasn't a whole lot of machines that could do what Tesla needed. It's like that was like the
yeah,
one vendor that like
innovation, right?
is
So you got to solve a problem no
crazy.
one else has solved.
Yeah, now they're like doing human training with the Optimus robots. So like soon the robots will be involved in the manufacturing line, I think.
Yeah,
That's their goal at least. They want to have that. They're doing a lot of lab testing right now, and then I think they want to try to do some pilot programs where the Optimus robots are actually helping manufacture the cars at the end of the year.
wow,
That
that'll be yeah,
that's like, and then you'll have robots building more robots, and so you'll
right.
have robots that were built by robots that are now building other robots. Like
Yeah.
potentially. I don't know. Like
Well, they have so there are these precision manufacturing machines that they use a lot in DoD building. That where the tolerances are so tight that there's some machines I think they're out of Japan that they call the mother machines, and their tolerances are so tight they can actually rebuild themselves. So like you just need to buy one, and then if any part breaks on it, like if you have another one, you can just build the part and just put it back and forth. So if you have
so
two,
cool.
you can like sustain them both forever.
Okay, I love that. That's a cool
Yeah,
concept. Yeah, of course it's a Japanese machine. Their tolerances are just like so tight. The other machine that is interesting, also a Japanese apparatus. I think the wing for the 787 Dreamliner, which is one of my favorite
hmm
aircraft, the Boeing 787 is just a
with that kind of
masterpiece.
bend and that they have in it.
Beautiful. That wing is a carbon fiber composite wing,
Hmm.
and so they have to put it in an autoclave, right? And like the largest autoclave that they can find is in Japan. So like that, I think that wing is baked in Japan. I don't know if it still is, but it was
Oh wow, yeah,
when they rolled out that aircraft. Yeah, it's like it's like an autoclave like the size of a small warehouse. It's like
yeah. That's crazy, and like the amount of energy that it takes to pump into that thing.
let me see if I can find it. I don't. Hopefully, I'm not misleading people. I think that was. I think when I came out, I remember reading about that. Yeah. Okay. World's largest autoclave. Yeah. Kawasaki Heavy Industries.
Okay, it's
So
in
they do a lot of
Kawasaki, Japan.
aerospace work.
Yeah,
They do turbines and stuff too. But yeah. So used for curing composites, the new autoclave is designed to support the demand for the 787 Dreamliner. Okay. So I wasn't lying. But this was back in 2014. They might have
yeah,
diversified their supply chain since then, but I mean, there's not that many Dreamliners though.
yeah.
Yeah, this thing's enormous. I mean, it's like a
Well, you just, I guess, you put it on a big container ship and you just ship the wings back and forth.
that's got to be how you do it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't see how else you would do it. I used to drive by the so they build the 787s I think in Seattle and Charleston. I think they have split production, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
know exactly how that works, but I know they were standing up a paint shop at the Charleston airport when I lived there, and seeing all the different like paint schemes for all the different international airlines was so cool because like the
Yeah.
787 for a lot of airlines that's like their flagship plane
Right.
because it's like a mid to wide
It's a,
body aircraft that can
yeah, long
go really
hauler.
far. Yeah, it
Yeah.
can go far. It's
Super
comfortable too.
efficient. And yeah, they have like the super pressurized cabin or whatever that like helps reduce jet lag and like
100%.
influence on your body. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime I'm on a Dreamliner, I'm just like, and you can just tell, 'cause like you said, the wing has a unique shape, and
Yeah.
then usually like the interior lighting is like really modern, and then you can just tell it's like their premier airplane. It's not,
Yeah.
I don't know, like people aren't super thrilled about the 747 or the. I don't think they even make the Airbus A3. What was it? The A380,
Oh, the big one.
the biggest one they made. It was like a
Yeah. I
million
think,
pounds gross weight.
yeah, I don't remember
Yeah, they stopped
that
making it.
one.
There's just like not enough demand for that, and you have
Right.
smaller aircraft that can do the same mission now.
Yep. Yeah, we
So
saw some 747s parked. Maybe it was in Seattle. We
so
were flying
big.
back from Hawaii, and I was like, I haven't seen one of those in forever. Like, oh, it's like a
Yeah,
relic now. But I mean, they revolutionized global travel.
they did. Yeah, I mean, when you have long haul flights where you can take off direct to like, Shanghai or Sydney from the US, that's
Hmm.
incredible. I know there used to be a direct flight from Dallas to Sydney. That was like one of the longest flights
Yeah,
that you could take. It was like an 18 or 19-hour
they
flight.
yeah, they still have it.
Oh,
I
they
looked at
do.
that one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was good. They used to have a direct flight from Atlanta to Shanghai. Delta did.
Hmm.
What
Yeah,
else?
there's one. I think Turkish Airlines just came to Denver, and there's one from Denver straight to Istanbul, which is pretty
Oh,
long.
Denver's got some like a surprisingly good amount of direct flights.
Yeah, they're
Like
really
it really does.
connecting. Yeah, connecting the world.
I liked flying out of Denver. I think that's one of my favorite airports to fly out of. Like it's so easy. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful airport, and I don't know. They don't suffer from some of the same problems that some of the other airports in the I don't know in the more densely populated areas do. I feel like Denver's got it figured out pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, it hasn't been too bad.
Yeah. Where did your affinity for machines and engineering and tinkering with stuff, like where did this come from? I know your dad's into motorcycles, but like how did you like gain a fascination with like really complex technologies? Because I feel like you gravitate towards that for some reason.
Yeah, I honestly like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
when I talk to a lot of coworkers, they're like the kids that would take the computer or take the TV and take it apart and try to put it back together. Um, I was never like that, but I was always like doing things like I'd want to build a ramp, right? Like I want to go faster and go higher. So like I would go kind of engineer and build something to like solve the problem that I had at the time. So it was like I guess I just got creative with solving my own problems, and then that just became like listening to other people and their problems, and then wanting to help solve those problems. Um, but like when I was a kid, I like taught myself to cook. Like I never like I watched Food Network, but like I never went to classes or anything like that. But it was like an episode of Chopped at the house where it was like, all right, we have this random pantry of ingredients. Let's make something edible. And
So
then my,
cool.
my rule to myself was no matter what I made, I had to eat it. So then when you make really terrible things, you figure out why you made really terrible things. So I think just that mindset of like trial and error and then like gained experience and problem solving on the fly kind of just collaborated into like this career that I had.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think cooking can be, you know, in itself like an art form? Do you think cooking can be
Yeah,
considered an art form?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because it's like we were saying earlier, right? There's an emotion to food. And I think the only thing that you really need for art is for it to invoke an emotion, whether that's a positive, negative,
Oh,
whatever.
cool.
As long as you're invoking emotion, like that's kind of how I define art. Um, so yeah, I think, especially nowadays with, Michelin starred restaurants everywhere, like Tampa and Orlando, we're getting Michelin stars. They're getting Michelin stars here in Denver now. Um, but like the focus isn't just on the food, but like the presentation and the experience and like all of that. And I know when I proposed to Melissa in Chicago years ago, we went to a restaurant called Grace, and it was a 3-star spot. And when we left, it was just like thinking back through the whole experience, like you're never hot, you're never cold, you're never needing for anything. Anytime you get up to go to the bathroom and come back, like your napkin's nicely placed there. Silverware for each course just comes and goes without you even noticing. It's just like a delicate dance. And like I think most people just think the food is the art, but I think the full experience and like how they think through everything and tailor to the guests and like really understand what the experience is going to be like and being like ahead of the game for you, I think is really, really magical.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the experience holistically, I mean, obviously the food has to be good, all right? People
Yeah.
want to come to have good food. But yeah, the experience, like just little details. I'm always so fascinated by how these restaurant operators can get like the temperature right, like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
comfort, the seating, the lighting, the ambiance, the music. Like it can't be too loud, can't be too quiet. Like it's a lot going on. I feel like running a restaurant would be very difficult, like very,
Yeah.
very challenging. Like, and how do you know like what food to order? Because like you can't predict what people are going to order.
Right.
I guess the
Yeah.
smaller the menu, the easier it is. But if you have like a cheesecake factory menu, like how do you?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you sort that out? They must throw away a ton of ingredients.
Well, and that's I
Yeah.
we read a statistic the other day, and it was like 80% of restaurants fail in the first 3 years in the US. And I think that's one of the big problems is like trying to figure out how do you hit your target market and how do you remove as much waste as possible. Whereas when you go to France, you can go to a restaurant for lunch and they have two things. It's like you can have the fish dish or you can have the beef dish. That's it. Like there's no other options. Comes with a glass of wine and it's like $10. Like clearly, they're doing something right by not having the waste and just kind of giving some options and also like what's fresh and what's local. So,
Yeah, yeah. That makes a difference too. If the ingredients are fresh, I feel like the flavors are much more complex and palatable.
mhm.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think if having a more focused menu, some of the best restaurants I've been to have like a really, really focused menu and they don't
Yeah,
deviate from that. Like they're not trying to do like a bunch of different meals, you know. They're not trying to do like, like the Cheesecake Factory. Hate to use that example, but like
right.
they don't have like, 20 different entrees.
Yeah,
You know,
every
they might
page
have
is
like
a different style of food, right? Which
yeah,
I've never actually been to a Cheesecake Factory before.
they're
And
pretty
Melissa and
good.
I were talking about that in Hawaii because there's one on Waikiki Beach and it was just packed. Like there was a line out the door. And I was like, man, I've never actually been to a Cheesecake Factory to like know what this is about.
It's good. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
a really fancy Applebee's, you know.
yeah.
Not that fancy, but it's pretty fancy. Had you been to Hawaii before, or was that your first time?
Now this is our first time,
Okay,
and
what'd you think? I gotta get your impression since you just came back.
yeah,
I haven't been to Hawaii since 2013. That was the one and only time I went there for about 10 days.
okay.
Um, I'm eager to. What's your impression of Hawaii?
So my hesitation with Hawaii is I thought it would be really touristy and just like overpriced and just kind of blah, and so that's why we haven't been before. But it was like that in some certain places, but just like everything was incredible. Like
Oh,
the
yes.
people were incredible, the food was incredible, like the landscape is incredible. We went to the Dole factory or the Dole plantation and got to see some of the history of like farming there, and then also like the culture is just incredible. We did one of the luau's, which I thought was going to be kind of touristy and kind of not great, but it was really incredible and really informative. And they like brought in all the other influences from French Polynesia and Tonga and America Samoa and like some of these other cultures that really impacted the way that the Hawaiian culture like grew and developed and traded with people. And they had different dances and different stories to go along kind of with the history. But I didn't realize that like Westerners hadn't set foot in Hawaii until the late 1700s. Like it had remained kind of off the map for so long, and like it's just these really small islands out in the middle of the ocean, so it makes sense. But it does have just like such a great foundation in its culture and in the history um, that I found like really refreshing and really exciting. And then we kind of traveled all over the island and hit up some of the more local spots outside of Waikiki on like the North Shore and kind of the what's that like the southeast corner of the island. I mean, it was really incredible. And then also we found that there's a meadery there that was super awesome as well. And apparently they've been having bee farms and farming for honey for a long time, but over the last 10 years or so, they decided to start making their own meat, and it was really incredible and like super refreshing. And it was kind of off the beaten trail in like this warehouse district in the back corner of this small town. And the people were just incredible. Yeah, it was magical. I want to go to every island now. I'm going to go back to
Yes,
every island now.
I know. Me too, dude. It's actually more accessible than people think from Denver because there's direct flights to Big Island, obviously to, Oahu. There's probably tons of direct flights from Denver. I
Yeah.
think,
And Maui as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, oh, and Maui too. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Maui has a pretty good airport as well. I love Maui. Maui is so cool. Oh, Maui's really cool. It's
Yeah.
like,
Because we're already
yeah.
trying to plan the next trip. So when we were flying back, I was looking at flights to go back.
Okay, good. I wish I'd done that. I honestly, I'm
Yeah.
eager to go back. It's harder when you're on the East Coast because it's a pretty long trip.
Right.
But
Yeah.
from Denver, if you can hop a direct flight, it's not.
Yeah. It's
Well,
like
it's
7 hours,
yeah,
like
it's not
six,
bad.
six if you get some good winds.
It's
So
worth it. Totally worth
that's
it,
like,
man.
yeah, that's lesser time than it is to go to Europe, sometimes. So
When I went there, I couldn't believe that. I was like, this is like part of the United States. It didn't like
yeah.
it felt a little bit like the United States, well, especially Honolulu kind of does with
Yeah.
the Cheesecake Factory and stuff. But like
Right.
as you get off the beaten path, like you said, I was like, I can't believe this is part of the United States. This is unreal.
Yeah.
You know, I met
It's
that's awesome. The people are
yeah.
awesome too. The locals are awesome.
I was gonna say everything felt like really comfortable and like relatable and like, you know, comforting, but then also very like different and unique. Um, so yeah, it was like exponentially better than I thought it was going to be, and I'm
Same.
really excited about that. So
Yeah, same. It exceeded my expectations. Not that I had like a lot of expectations coming into it, but like I honestly didn't want to leave. Like part of
yeah.
me, I was still in the army. I'd just gotten back from
Hmm.
Afghanistan, and that was like our post deployment leave trip. So we,
Hmm.
we'd saved a bunch of money up from the deployment and stuff, and there are a lot of like military discounted hotels
Yep.
in some of the islands. And I when we were because we spent the first several days in Oahu, and then we took a little flight over to Maui, and we spent a few days in Maui, and Maui felt amazing. And I there was a part of me when we were walking around the beach in Paia, which I think is like the northeast part of Maui, if I'm not mistaken. Um, it's like a little beach town that has, 5 or 6 restaurants, a tiny little grocery store, like a
Right.
local grocery store. And my wife and I walked into the grocery store. We bought a mango, fresh mango. And like,
Hmm.
oh, we don't have a knife, so we bought a knife there, like a ceramic knife, like one of those little, cheap.
Hmm.
We still have it. It's our mango knife. And when we just like ate a mango on the beach, and like this is towards the end of the trip, probably like our last few days of the trip. So I was like finally we were really like kind of like
Relax
unwinded,
and yeah.
relax. Yeah, we
Hmm.
were really enjoying the trip. And there was a small part of me that was like, what if I just like desert the army and just like not like
Just
what if
stay.
just not go back? Like there was a small part of me that like
Yeah.
that scenario was going through my head because I met a few people in Maui. I met this one lawyer who was with his kids, taking his kids at soccer, and Katie and I were having coffee at the coffee shop where he was, and we were just talking to him. He went to Maui when he was like 22 years old. He was a single guy, or maybe younger. You meet a lot of people like this in Maui who
Yeah.
move there, not intending to move. Well, they don't move. They don't intend to move there, but they go to visit and they stay for an extended period of time, and then they
Right.
just don't leave. And then now he's got 2 daughters. He found a wife that was local to Maui, and he
Hmm.
lived there for 20 years. Another guy I met, him and his wife got married in San Diego. You'll love this story. He got married in San Diego in like the 1970s, like 1972, 73, and for their honeymoon, they had a small sailboat. He was a big sailing guy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. And so he got a sailboat. They sailed from San Diego to Maui, thinking like, okay, we'll spend like a month or two down there honeymooning,
Yeah.
and then we'll sail back to San Diego. They ended up staying in Maui, and he'd been there for 30 years.
Wow.
Like him and his wife had been in the 30 years. They lived in the boat for the first year or two, and then they eventually,
Yeah.
he got a job and a house. But when they arrived, he's like, yeah, we're not leaving. Like we're not leaving. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like, but you meet a lot of people like that. At least
Well,
I
and
did.
like yeah, I get it. Like when we drove to North Shore, we were gonna go to the state park beach thing, that, had like nice bathrooms and all the stuff,
Yep.
and it was slammed. There were like people like waiting in line to turn in, and we're like, nah, we'll just keep driving and we'll find something else. So we found like a section of parking on the side of the road that was open and like kind of off the path, and we walked down to the beach, and there was like this section of beach. I don't know, maybe it was like 150 yards like wide, between these two like giant pylons of like rocks, and there were like 12 people there, and the
Dude.
like sand went out maybe like 10 feet, and then it was reef. After that it was like rocks and brain coral and all this other stuff, and we had taken our snorkel gear, so we like got to hang out and just like sit in the surf and like cool
Amazing.
off, and then we went and swam and snorkeled through there and saw like all kinds of crazy fish and stuff, which I wasn't expecting to see like so close to a beach. But the waves were crashing a little heavier, and there were kind of these um, like rock monuments, maybe like 100 yards off of the beach, that were causing the water to funnel through kind of these grooves, and so um, the like rip tides like going in and out of there were like pretty strong. So while we're snorkeling, it's like you see all the fish like move 10 feet one way and 10 feet the other way, and it's like, well, I know why like the tourists don't want to come hang out here, because you like actually have to swim and do stuff, but it was just magical, like
It's
to
amazing, right?
be in that kind of nature, like walking distance from a beach, and like not have a bunch of people everywhere. Yeah,
Oh, dude.
that was like the best moment while we were there.
The North Shore is great. I mean, I
Mm,
was almost intimidated when we were there. The waves were really strong. This was like in
yeah.
September. It was like right after Labor Day or whatever,
Hmm.
2013. And like I'd never seen waves like that before. Like
Right. Yeah. Same.
I was like,
Exactly.
and I'm normally like the first one to just jump in the ocean. Like I love
Yeah.
swimming in the ocean, but it made me a little nervous. I was like a little
Yeah.
bit nervous to get in there. I was intimidated by the waves. I was like, dude, this current is obviously very strong. There's warnings, like, hey,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not like the Florida beaches, right, where the waves are like maybe 2 or 3 feet every time they come crashing in.
exactly. No, it's nothing like the Florida waves. You're right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so. I don't know. I totally get why people settle down in Hawaii and like do whatever they can to make it there. And if you ever go to Maui or I haven't been to the other islands, but I heard Kauai is the same way. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, it's like everything you loved about Oahu. It sounds like, but like there's like an order of magnitude less people,
Right.
tourists
Yeah.
included, but also less permanent residents
Hmm.
and more landmass. So like less people, more land. The
Yeah.
hiking is incredible. Like there's some awesome hiking in Oahu too. Like really beautiful hiking trails.
Hmm.
Yeah, through the woods and the jungles. There's actually a lot of people ride dual sports in Maui. So if you're into like dual sports, like a lot of great motorcycle riding in Maui, off road.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. There's
Yeah.
just like
Just
so much to do.
yeah. And like if you're on a boat, you can just sail between all the different islands. Like it might be a day or two or something of like the longest sail
I didn't think about that.
from
That'd
like
be
the
so
main
cool.
the main cluster of islands. But yeah, like it's like yeah, the amount of preserved kind of nature and culture and all of that was like really intoxicating. Like it was so nice to see,
Yeah.
right? Because even now when you go to like Cancun or Cozumel or somewhere, it's just very urbanized and like very touristy. There's like going to be a Senior Frogs. There's going to be a Margaritaville. It's like you kind of expect the same things everywhere. So I was kind of expecting that's how Hawaii would be, and it was drastically different. So
Yeah.
I was like, anytime you want to go to the beach, we're going to go to Hawaii instead of Mexico now for a little
Yeah.
while.
No,
Plus, you
I
don't have to
would.
go through customs, so it like saves you. Like the flight might be slightly longer to Hawaii, but I think the end travel time ends up being less because you don't get stuck in customs and border patrol and all that.
It's so worth it. It's so worth
Yeah,
the trip. If anybody's out there listening that has not been to Hawaii, like if you have an opportunity to go, like don't hesitate. I mean, it is really magical.
yeah,
Hawaii is like, yeah, it's everything people say, but then it's like so much more. And like
yeah,
there's a flavor for everybody too. I mean, the food is incredible. If you like beaches, if you like hiking, I mean, you don't have to get like pigeonholed in any one activity. Like there's really a lot to
yeah,
do for everyone.
yeah. And we
Um,
didn't plan really much ahead of time, and we were able to do something cool and different every day. We did do
same.
some hiking. Ended up in a bamboo forest up on like one of the mountaintops while it was raining. Like that was magical. Um, yeah, it was just a bunch of really great moments, and like even the worst food that we had was better than some of the best food I've had in like mainland cities while we were there.
Yeah,
So
same. I imagine like the food has to be good, otherwise those restaurants probably have a really difficult time surviving on
yeah,
Oahu.
like
Like,
everything's expensive. So and it wasn't as expensive as I thought it was going to be. Like once you're out of the touristy area, like food and everything like that was pretty comparable to Denver prices.
yep.
Gas was definitely more expensive.
Oh yeah, gas is like double what you pay here in the states, in the
Yeah,
mainland states, CONUS,
but
whatever states.
mm,
Yeah, I'm trying to think what we had good Cuban food, we had good local food.
ooh,
I don't know, man. It was good sushi,
mhm.
but yeah, I think just the access to all like the fresh like fruits and vegetables, just like
Yeah. Like I'm addicted to passion fruit now after being there. Like I'd never had a fresh passion fruit until I was in Australia a couple months ago. And so the whole time we were there, they call it Lila Koi. I would just like get that in anything. Like if they had smoothies with it, I would get it. If they had a beer that like had that flavor added, I got it. Like ice cream, gelato, yeah, passion fruit all the way. So
Lila Koi. I've heard that
yeah,
name. I didn't know that that's what it meant. That's cool.
hmm, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I always like
yeah,
to like open up at the end of the podcast if there's anything you want to talk about or ask me about. I'm trying to make these more conversational, but really anything that you want to talk about or ask me. So
I was gonna say like we've been talking about software, right? And like software being the frontier of kind of the next tech boom if we're not there already, right? I saw that Google started to add their AI um, element to like Google searches and stuff now. So like, how are you feeling about software and that kind of thing? I know you recently kind of jumped into that industry, and like, where do you see that going, and how do you see that influencing like day-to-day life?
Yeah, so there's two things that come to mind because I've been trying to keep my pulse on what the tech industry is doing and where they're going, so I don't get left behind. So
Hmm.
I really need to like hire someone to like just teach me this stuff on a monthly basis and keep me updated. But I've been trying to do my own research. The first really critical infrastructure that needs to be built is, a lot of people think that like an open source AI architecture is kind of the way forward, and that's the way Meta is going. So Meta's heavily invested in open source architecture. I think Google is too. OpenAI is closed. That's like kind of like more of a closed
Hmm.
model. I think so. We're going to benefit by just like all the same thing that we saw with like GitHub, where there's just so much out there. You don't have to start from scratch. Like if you and I
Yeah,
wanted
like
to,
software factory kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. No, precisely. So there's that aspect of it. It's like what's going to be the next infrastructure. Like I hate to use this term, like the next HTML. Like what's going to be the language and the methodology that people use to build software. And then on top of that, since I'm not a computer science guy, and the NVIDIA executives have talked a lot about this, you might not need to be a software engineer to do some really amazing coding, because there's going to be like natural language processors that can understand what the objective, like what you want to accomplish. Like if, let's say Corey wanted to write some sort of script to do some nifty feature, or figure out some problem for a customer. Like I think there'll be natural language tools where you can just explain or dictate what you want to happen, and like 80 or 90% of the code, whether it be a bare metal coding if you're doing like some hardware stuff, or if you're doing like more advanced software engineering.
Hmm.
I just think there'll be so many tools available for like the average Joe like
Yeah,
me. I don't know. So I think those two things are interesting to me.
it's like more open
Um,
accessibility to like the layman
yeah,
when it comes to like improving the
exactly.
software. Yeah, integration.
Yeah. What have
Cool.
you seen? Because you kind of, I've seen a totally different side of the software, but like there's gonna be AI models that just do so much test and V work for you. I don't know
Hmm.
what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think optimization, like in every aspect, is going to become much better. Like what I want to see is when you sit at stoplights for a really long time and there's no cross traffic, but you're still sitting at a red light for like a minute or two, right? Like I understand that there needs to be holding points in a city for traffic, but if they could integrate in time to where we minimize the amount of time we're spending at stoplights, like that saves people 10 minutes a day of their life,
Yep.
right? That's a whole bunch of life that you get back from optimization, just from a small thing that we've grown accustomed to and just kind of accept as part of modern life. So I think optimization in the day-to-day life will free up a lot more opportunity for us to go do other things. Um,
I
so
think
like
so too.
that's what I'm looking forward to, is like the industrial revolution, where like the plow came in so people could plow a field in a day instead of a week, right? Like I think that type of um, paradigm shift is going to be really awesome.
I think
And
it's a really,
optim
yeah, I think it's a really real comparison that you just made. I think it's gonna free up people to do other things that maybe they're more interested in, or more creative work,
hmm.
um, or just thinking more strategically and more future focused. The optimization for like traffic, like you're saying, is one thing that I think about a lot, because, I, not to bring up Tesla again and again, but like they have invested heavily in a software architecture that, takes all the data that they're getting from these mainly optical sensors now. They used to have LiDAR systems in their cars, but
Hmm.
the optical sensors are good enough when paired with these software algorithms that they can pretty much navigate, most roads now. And as the FSD software improves,
Hmm.
like it seems like every quarter or two they come out with a new version of it. I think people see that as like a multi-trillion-dollar industry if you can just call a car just like you call an Uber, and then a
Hmm.
car comes and picks you up and it's unmanned, and then extrapolate that. So it might not just be a Model Y. It might be like what you see as like a city bus in Denver. It might be that
Hmm.
size vehicle or something in between. And when you think about that kind of optimization, where there's not like a need for parking lots, the cars don't get into accidents, they don't really get into traffic,
Yeah.
they can just operate with more efficiency around the roads. And then you couple that with like that could, in essence, the way our infrastructure is set up in the U.S., that could replace like light rails, that could replace trains. Like it'd be more convenient just to go from A to B than having to like get on a different train. So I've thought a lot about that, and from optimization, like that, there could be like hypothetically there could be like a 12 to 15 passenger EV bus or train, or not train, bus or van that could pick you up at a very, very low cost. Like the cost would be super low because I mean 80% of the Uber right now is the driver. 80% of the revenue goes to the driver. So think about if your Uber ride was 80% less expensive than it is today or more. I mean, that's pretty compelling. Like that's, you know what I mean? And it takes you exactly to where you want to go. Like you're not having to get like on the train and then get on the light rail and then go to the Denver airport. No, it just drops you off exactly where you need to go.
Right.
So that optimization that could disrupt a lot of stuff, not just Uber drivers. That could disrupt a lot of infrastructure.
The whole automotive industry. Yeah.
The whole automotive industry, maybe light rails, maybe buses. Like there might not be a need for all of that infrastructure because we've already invested in asphalt roads in the U.S. And anytime you want to build a new light rail, it seems like it costs, $10 billion.
Right.
Well,
then you're talking like that's step one, and then step, 3 or 4 down the road is like the Jetsons and everything. We have 3-dimensional space we can now travel in.
Yeah.
So
I think that's very real.
Point A to point B becomes much more efficient than it is now, right?
Totally. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I like your viewpoint on optimization. I think software is just so good at doing that kind of like those kind of tasks, that are just like this is like an obvious inefficiency here, but how do we solve it? I think
it's like
yeah,
I was gonna say it's like the commercials where they're talking about like, is data the new gold? And it's like, yes, it is, but what you do with the data is actually the better thing, right? Gold doesn't really have the value until you make it into something.
Some people have also said that data is the new oil.
Yeah.
Like people have said that, if energy costs come down, oil, petroleum products won't be as relevant, which I think is real. That'll happen. That data, so, these tech companies that have large, terabytes or what is it, pegabytes? What's the highest one? Petabytes?
Petabytes, I think.
Petabytes. They have petabytes of like high definition video and stuff that they can they'll be able to build some really, really crazy algorithms. I mean, think about how many YouTube videos are uploaded every day. I mean, it's like, I don't think it's petabytes every day, but it's something close to that. So
I'll say probably globally.
Globally, yeah.
Surprise me. Okay.
So there's like 30 million YouTube channels, and then Meta has access to a bunch of video and audio and messages too. So yeah, I think the efficiencies, and then I think the cost of some of these software widgets with the open source architecture, the cost is going to come way down. Like I think it won't be that crazy if someone wants to, build a new avionics software for a spacecraft. Like they can maybe do that in their dorm room in 5-10 years, like that, because the infrastructure will be there to where like they don't have to, be an aerospace guy. They can find a model off of GitHub and then tweak it and then do the execution to sell it. I don't know. I think the infrastructure will be there. I think Jeff Bezos said like he hopes that'll happen because like the reason he was able to start Amazon out of his garage was because there was already credit cards. There was already the postal service. Like the infrastructure for him to build Amazon was already there.
Right.
And so the infrastructure for new companies to evolve in the future, like the software infrastructure would just be so much more available. It would just be so much more available. So
well, then with all this data, we're going to need more processing power. And with more processing power comes, a potential quantum advantage. But we can talk about that next time.
Nice. Well, dude, enjoy your weekend in beautiful, sunny Colorado. I miss that Colorado sunshine so much, man.
85 here today. It's really hot, actually.
Yeah, that sun will roast you, man.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and you can stay on for a minute. I'll end the recording, but hang on one second.
Yeah.